Good afternoon, Mr. Mariwala. Good to talk to you again. First of all, I hope you and your family and your extended family of Marico is doing well. The most used word in every business is hybrid.
Yes,
Whether we
yes,
talk of education, we are talking of edutech is growing, but
yes,
possibly it'll be a hybrid combination of on-campus and edutech. Uh,
yes.
and it's an and economy. Ours is not
True,
an either-or economy. In a
true,
lot of
true.
product categories, super premium of a certain price range exists with numbers, and of course, there'll be a basic, which is very value for money exists in. So tell us, going forward, what do you see happening in terms of consumer preferences, choices? Of course, health and immunity have become very important for individuals,
Yeah,
and they're focusing on their health a lot
yes,
more than they did before. But give us some
yes.
of the trends that will happen in this country, which may even be oxymoronish. Multiple trends coexist, so to say, which may not be possible in any other part of the world.
Yeah, so I think multiple trends, I would say. I think the biggest shift is the digital shift, in my opinion. And when I'm talking of digital, I'm talking of Zoom calls, virtual meetings, I'm talking of virtual learning for children, virtual consultation. Um, so virtual buying, e-commerce. So whole our lives have changed. We got so used to operating virtually that we are not going to go back completely to our old ways of doing things. To me, that is the biggest trend, and organizations which are good at leveraging these digital opportunities will do extremely well. Even in terms of an FMCG products, how do we supply products to a retail outlet where we cannot visit because of all the lockdowns? So can you be virtually connected to the retailers? With the consumer also, can you can you have your own stores where you can deliver at home? So a whole host of initiatives to excel virtually are going to emerge as a very, very big trend in future. In addition to that, as you rightly put, health, whether it is mental health, physical health, the food you eat, very high degree of awareness and sensitivity to eating the right foods, have the right weight. So I think that's again a very, very good trend to happen. First one also, I think it'll help the environment. Unnecessary travel, which you used to do for having a short meeting. I would call people for an interview from outstation for an hour or so. I will never call them in future, because why should they waste the whole day just commuting and, traveling from, say, Delhi or Bangalore, wherever they're coming from. All that can be done on Zoom calls. And I think the fact that it has persisted for so long, it has ingrained into our habits. If the whole pandemic was for a short period of time, we would have gone back to our old way of doing things. But our habits have changed, Even the consumer also, the housewife is now so used to ordering food online that they will continue doing that. Of course, they will go to the shops. So as you said, this and that, So physical and digital, as the word is phygital, is the way forward. Even in terms of immunity also, I think people are getting far more conscious about the fact that one has to maintain health and have the right kind of immunity providers, whether it's vitamins or whether it is whatever Indian immunity options of honey or whatever Ayurvedic options. So immunity, there's a big trend. And I think people have realized that because of lack of pollution, lower pollution, the need to take care of the environment. I think there is a very big realization that we have to protect our environment and sustainability issues. So organizations are now forced by all the stakeholders, whether it is consumers, whether it is employees, the board members, associates, the society, that you have to look at what is now the new term which is emerged, the ESG, environment, social, and governance, So I think all boards are now saying that ESG is very crucial to me. If I don't adhere to ESG, then there may not be shareholders wanting to touch my company. So ESG has become a hot topic at the board, and every board meeting, all companies are discussing what is the ESG journey, how can it improve on a regular basis. So I think these are the trends which have emerged in the pandemic. And I think it all depends on how the organizations are reacting to these trends. Are they looking at it from a threat point of view? Are they looking at it from an opportunistic angle? And make investments accordingly, At one level, you may say that the e-commerce emergence is a threat to FMCG companies. At another level, it's an opportunity because you are getting to sell your products through these channels, where the consumer is able to try the product. If they don't like it, they can return it back. So there is a great opportunity to launch newer initiatives, different larger packs. And as a percentage also, e-commerce sales have more than doubled in last 1 year. And now I think compared to the earlier base, I reckon that by the end of 21, 22, they'll be at, as against something like 3%, they'll be at 9 or 10%. So they would have trebled. It's a very big trend. But everything else will continue. And you will have modern stores which have suffered in the recent past because of closures. You will have the grocers who have also learned through this pandemic to offer better consumer service. So they are competing with each other and trying to nullify the benefits of e-commerce by giving experience to the consumer, taking return back products also. So I think all three channels in terms of FMCG channels will continue. The percentages may differ, but I don't see a situation where one channel will replace other channels.
Thank you so much. And you talked of ESG, both you as a leader, as an entrepreneur, or you as a largest shareholder in Marico, you're very, very conscious of ESG, much before a lot of people started to think about in the way they do today. Give us a sense of your own organization's journey on ESG, on environment, society, and governance. Give us some insights on that.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. I think this is a subject which is very dear to me. As a promoter, as a key shareholder, my job is not just to get income out of the company or dividend out of the company. I think the role of the organization has changed to look at all the stakeholders. So whether it is shareholders or employees or associates or consumers, you have to look at all the stakeholders because they are interlinked. I think that realization leads you to look at the whole subject of ESG in a very different manner. So you can't cause environmental damage because you have to realize that you are a part of this world, and if you are able to improve, then it will have a very positive rub-off on your image and amongst all the stakeholders. And I think the good thing is all the stakeholders I talked about are very demanding. I mean, if I have to go to a good campus and recruit students from the campus, they are bound to ask me questions. What is the ESG journey for the organization? So the good thing is that some organizations started on their own, and we were one of them, is that the stakeholders are putting in a lot of pressure on organizations to adhere to ESG guidelines and improve on ESG scores. And as I said earlier, there are some funds which are only buying in companies which are ESG compliant. And the same thing, as I said, with employees, future employees, associates, even the board also. If I have to recruit a board member, they will ask me what is the ESG journey. So because of these pressures which are put by the external stakeholders, there is a huge momentum happening to the ESG. And I think for each of them, we have taken targets. It's a journey. It's not a destination. And for each of them, we do our utmost. So in our case, in terms of environment, whether it is the water we use or whether it is the fuel we use, we try to be carbon neutral, or we are carbon neutral in all of them. We use a lot of plastics, and over a period of time, we have ensured that 95% of our usage of plastics is either reused or recycled. So, and 5% left also in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll tackle that. So there is a proactive approach to improving on each of these scores. And finally, on governance, which relates to related party transactions, role of the promoters, compliances, and also thrust given internally to improve on the governance through cultural means. You can have best of rules, you can have the best of laws, but ultimately it has to come from within. And I think what we are trying to do is not through diktats, but through actually convincing people down the line that this makes utter business sense. There is a huge payback, and we have to go on doing this on a perpetual basis because there will be newer opportunities for you to improve on each of these ESG scores.
Thank you so much. let me bring in my senior editorial colleague, Jyotsna Sharma, into the conversation. Jyotsna, your next set of questions, Mr. Mariwala.
Mr. Mariwala, I will change track a little bit. I'll actually go back to where you were talking about how businesses can weather this storm. And we've been through a lot. The situation is still quite grim in terms of, the destruction that COVID has caused. And so what are the key things that a business should focus on right now in the short term to get themselves back up and going?
Yeah. So I think a lot will depend on the kind of business you are in, because different businesses are hit differently by COVID. And as they say, there's a K-shaped recovery. Businesses like FMCG are doing extremely well. Last year, when the lockdown happened, we had a supply chain issue for 1 or 2 months. But post that, we have been able to learn from our first experience. So our supply chain is far better and far more robust this year compared to last year. We are also in essential commodities. Last year, there was a lot of panic buying. This year, there's no panic buying because the people are used now to live a life through the pandemic. So in our case, FMCG, we have had a fairly good run. We've grown in profits as well as in sales. But there are other sectors like tourism, or even in our case, we have this Kaya Skin Clinics where we were forced to close down last year and again this year in April to June. So what do you do in a situation like that is a big challenge for organization. I think the most important thing is to ensure that you remain afloat in the period where you are hit very badly, and you have to take care of again your own employees. So you have to give them a very authentic picture what's happening in that business, which is under a lot of stress. And I strongly believe that you have to go on informing them every month what's happening, what is the impact on the organization, because if there is uncertainty and if you don't communicate, it will lead to a huge degree of fear and stress amongst your own employees, and you want to overcome that. So whatever is the picture, and you try to do your best to support all your employees. If there's a complete closure, and if there is organization cannot afford to pay the salary, if there's a cut in salary, it's better to proactively say that this will we won't be able to pay salary, and then as soon as things are back to normal, we will increase salary. So things like that, and instead of just remaining quiet, and sometimes, if you remain quiet, the employees don't know whether will you be in business, not be in business, what will be the cut. So it's better to be open and fair and give an authentic picture to all the employees. I think another thing is, it's a great opportunity to get into consumer, their lives, and look at this crisis from a different angle. We in Kaya, ourselves, you started doing all the e-consultation online now. So there are opportunities for you to overcome some of the consumer connect absence through these routes. Even in terms of your own employees, it's an opportunity to go to the families of your own employees, So because there is a lot of stress, anxiety, you can do a lot in the area of health, immunity, just keeping up the interest, boredom, and involve the whole family. So we have done that in involving the whole family, creating contests for anything which keeps the family busy, whether it's children or spouses, and generating contests so that the family also starts understanding what the organization is doing. In the past, there was a big divide because the family was not involved. But now with this pandemic, you actually are getting a great opportunity to interact with all the family members. Of course, if there is a crisis in terms of somebody hit by COVID, somebody needs hospitalization, organization has to walk that extra mile in ensuring that whatever help is needed, whether it's medical help, whether it's medicines or hospitalization or oxygen, they have to try their utmost in helping all the employees. And finally, now that the vaccines are out, I think organizations also are looking at not only giving vaccines to their own employees, but to their family members, to key associates who are interacting with their own employees on a regular basis. Maybe it could be some contractors, it could be an advertising agency where you have a lot of people from advertising coming to your office. So you go beyond your own circle of employees and cover them in terms of providing them immunity. So I think the pandemic has taught a new leadership style, I would say, which is authentic, empowering, which is with a lot of empathy. And at the same time, great opportunity to reach all the stakeholders, whether it's your own employees, whether it's your customers, whether it is your associates. as well as the society. Society needs so much of help in these times, especially in the first wave of pandemic, where all the migrant labor, went. So whether it's free meals or whatever help you can give. So I think organizations have learned a lot in terms of far more looking at all the stakeholders in this journey.
Right. So basically, communication, connection, and caring. These are the three things that you pointed out. So moving on, I wanted to also talk a little bit about success and failure and your ideas of it. So in today's day and age, what does it take? What traits are required to be a successful entrepreneur?
So I think a lot depends on at what stage you are. I think if you're a startup, then I think you need to identify what is the proposition you are offering to the consumer. And you may have a proposition, but most of the time, the proposition you may have when you started may alter quite a lot, because no amount of market research is going to give you all the answers. You may do your insighting with consumers, but the moment you go into that business, you'll realize that the consumer likes something, doesn't like something. So the key thing is to have a proposition which cuts size at a basic level with the consumers and get into a business, and then have a very, very close touch with the consumers. Again, depending on the kind of business you are in, and go on altering your mix depending on the needs of the consumer, whether it's the price they don't like, or whether it's packaging or the product or positioning or whatever else. I'm talking of FMCG kind of a product, but anything you do, you have to be in touch with the consumer. Are you satisfying a need of the consumer? And in satisfying the need, are you offering something which makes sense to the consumer so that they go on using your product or services on a regular basis? And that can only be done by actually entering the marketplace. And I think there are limitations to market research, and all answers cannot be available through market research. So you have to go into the marketplace, try it out. Maybe if you are not able to bear the losses for long, then you can do it on a very small scale, what is known as prototype or experiment. And then depending on the experience, you try and scale it up. So I think once you have the proposition that, okay, you have something interesting, then you start scaling up, and then the skills required are very, very different. When you are small, when you are setting up a business, you are doing things on your own, because you are a very small outfit. You can't afford to invest a lot of money in overheads. But as soon as you realize that now the business is poised for growth, the whole thing changes. From doing things, you have to start getting things done through others. And that's a very different journey for any entrepreneur. Many entrepreneurs falter in that. They think that they know it all. They think that they cannot delegate because they are the master of their own journey. But unless they get things done from others, they will not be able to grow. So your role is then to select a very good quality talent and create a culture where they work on their own. And your role is shift from doing things to getting things done from others.
Right.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mariwala. Just on this, I remember I met you 7 years back, and even 7 years back, you were, your organization was doing very well. It was growing. Yeah. You had become an executive, non-executive, so to say. You have you're more a mentor to your CEO and your top management team and the promoter. But I remember you had a visitor who was a coach. He was here from Singapore, and you were getting mentoring and coaching. So clearly you believe in what you say. I remember that incident 7 years I was in your office and come to meet you. So tell me, do leaders need mentoring coaches, and how does coaching help? Give us a sense from your own personal journey.
Yes, I think it's a very good question. I think many leaders think that they know it all. And that's where the problem starts. The moment anybody says that I know it all, I don't need to listen to anybody, then you are doomed at some stage in life, because the environment is changing. You need different skills in turn, and your organization is changing. Scale is going up, and I think bottom of all that is that every person has some blind spots, and they don't realize what are the blind spots. So what coaching does is actually gathers feedback from all the people whom you're interacting with, whether it's your peers, whether it's your subordinates, or your superiors, depending on the situation or position you are in. And based on that, a 360-degree appraisal is done, which identifies your strengths, which identifies areas requiring improvement, which identifies the blind spot. And then it gets converted into some goals. Okay, I need to improve on, for example, if I don't have good on empathy for it, and which is very critical for the business, then I think the coach tries to teach coaches you in how to be more empathetic, So it's ultimately broken down into 3 or 4 goals of improvement, depending on not necessarily just rectifying a weakness. It could be a strength which you can improve upon also. What is most relevant for business? So depending on what's most important, there may be some fatal flaws which you have to rectify. If you don't rectify, the business will suffer a lot. There could be some minor faults which the coach may say, okay, now it's all right, you try and improve on it is not impacting the organization as much. So the key thing is to identify and prioritize your areas of improvement, your areas of strengths which can be further strengthened. And then on a regular basis, the coach will teach you in terms of giving you guidance in terms of how to improve on those areas which you identified with the coach. Fantastic. And I think it's relevant for each and every, at the topmost level also, everybody needs a coach in my opinion. At least for some time. I'm not saying on a perpetual basis, but 1 year, 2 year, everybody, including in my organization, starting from me to my MD, to everybody's had a coach, And then there is a linkage between sometimes personal issues and professional issues, And every person goes through some setbacks, some failures, some crisis at a personal level. That should again not impact the business. So if that is the case, then one may have to look at that part also,
Absolutely. A human being is a human being. What happens in his personal life can impact how he engages with everyone.
It could be anything. It could be a relationship with parents. It could be anything. Children. It could be spouse. It could be some crisis faced because of healthcare or whatever else. But I think the key thing is to ensure that that's not impacting your work as far as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We also wanted to talk to you about your book.
Yes, please.
Tell us a little bit about Harsh Reality. What is it? What inspired it?
So it actually started off by, I speak a lot. On an average, I may be speaking 2 to 3 times a month at various events. And multiple times, a lot of people told me that why don't you capture this in a book? And I think that was one of the triggers. And then when I stepped down as managing director, I said, okay, I have to keep myself occupied. So let me start with that journey. I went through my own set of learning in terms of writing a book. And it took much, much longer than what I had expected. I think that was the trigger, the feedback given to me, as well as the fact that I had some time. That was the trigger to start writing the book. As I said, I went through a huge learning curve. And the book has undergone a lot of changes compared to what I had thought of. And then in that process, I was able to rope in Professor Ramcharan to help me in this book by giving insights. And I think ultimately what has emerged is I'm very happy with the end result now. It's in a story format where you can actually read the book. It's a light reading. I've given it to a few ladies, few friends of mine, some non-business people also, and they felt that it is very easy to read. At the same time, it has a lot of learnings and insights which could be relevant for entrepreneurs who are starting a business or want to scale it up, or for professionals who are working in the company, or for students also, management students. So it cuts across a variety of target audiences, which I think will benefit a lot because it's easy to read, and then it's well captured. The insights out of those experiences are captured by Professor Ramcharan at the end of each chapter, which is just 1 or 2 pages. But if some part of the book you're not interested, for example, there's a chapter on improving board effectiveness. If you're not running a company, and if you want to skip, you can skip that. But there is a chapter on how to build a strong culture within an organization, how to drive innovation, what is the purpose of the organization, and things like that. So it's my own journey, starting from the time I started as a very young boy to where I ended, and what are the failures, what are the learning out of failures. So it's quite interesting, I would say, and it's quite light reading, and at the same time it has a huge number of lessons for anybody.
Thank you so much. I want to ask, I asked you this in my last interaction. clearly the consumer internet businesses are very valuable.
Yeah.
So we can all argue about their valuations. Okay.
Yes.
And sometimes these valuations have, I mean, at least they seem very, very futuristic. I'm being polite, okay?
Yes.
Distant, you know.
Yes.
And so what do you have to say about that?
I'm not an expert on this new age businesses and the valuations also. Both I'm not experts. So it's difficult to believe that, you can create so much value in a company which is losing loads and loads of money. And I think ultimately there has to be some visibility of profitability. And you can't just go on saying that I'll become bigger and bigger and not making money. So I'm a little bit of an old school where I'm not saying day one you start making money, but over a period of 5-7 years, a new business also has to start making money. So, and not just get scale, but there are funders who are willing to, they look at size and then the value depends on the size of the turnover. And so I think they drive a certain behavior which the entrepreneurs, so they go after scale without looking at profitability. But I think this pandemic also has taught that I think increasingly more funders are now asking for, okay, well, when will the bottom line come? Which is a good development, I would say.
Thank you so much. And you're right, clearly, in some way, this is scarcity premium. In some way, it is the value being created. And maybe in future, that may scale up in big time because of you being a leader, and that's possibly being factored. I also last time asked you, and I'll ask about 2 months back, a large FMCG company hired a new CEO. And suddenly, within 2 days, its stock price and hence the market capitalization grew by almost 24,500 crores.
Yes.
Almost 20% of more than 20% value creation by just hiring a professional.
Yes.
So what do you have to say about, you talked about governance a little back, but how do you see this phenomenon of professionals coming on board and suddenly the value is unlocked, or the market starts to see the value being unlocked?
So I think a lot depends on who is the professional coming in. So I think this time the market has put a bet on this professional who I don't know him, but he must be coming with a lot of credibility and the impact he would. So the market is expecting that a new leader in this company will drive a lot of growth and it will improve the overall financials of the company. And it's a bet they're taking on the professional, So, but that doesn't mean that every professional will get this kind of spike in valuations. I think a lot depends on the kind of professional, and maybe this individual has had a very good perception amongst the investors that, and then a lot also depends on the company and the business the company is, and to what extent that professional can actually have an impact in terms of that particular business. So you have to combine the potential in that business with the company is, and superimpose that with the person who comes in and what kind of impact that person will be. But ultimately, leadership is the one and the talent which actually drives any valuation in any company, I would say. So to that extent, especially in FMCG company, and I started with zero capital, and we built something only on talent, nothing else, and ideas. So I think it's a bet on this individual, and to that extent, there would be some degree of high expectations from him coming in, because he's not even come in. I think from what I know of,
it was just an announcement,
and it was a 6 months period. So he was, because of this leave and all that, so he's going to join only in October, but it has had a huge impact on the share prices.
Okay, my last question.
Yeah.
If I were to talk to you in 12 months from now, what do you think? I know you're a listed company, and around your results and in your quarterly calls, your CEO and people responsible for running the company do make, calibrated and rightful future-looking statements. But as your vision, because you're the promoter, you're the largest shareholder, as a promoter, what is your vision for Marico moving forward?
See, Marico is a very focused company, and we will be in FMCG products. We'll pursue the new channels, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's e-commerce or modern trade or grocer or chemist. But we'll be focused on beauty and wellness. So that's very clear that we will be focused on beauty and wellness, and all our newer initiatives will be in this area. Now, a lot depends on our portfolio, and in identifying portfolio, we have to have a very strong right to win. So we have to have a product range which is either innovative or pioneering, and where we can see ourselves becoming number one or number two. So it's very important that you get market leadership, because market leadership ensures better
access to
financial
capital, access to talent,
capital is not an issue
access
at our
to
end, but
distribution.
correct, and also better financials, because you get economies of scale. So your overall cost structure is better, because if you spend on advertising, but your advertising as a percentage to sales is much lower for a market leader. So it's important to become a strong market leaders, have a bouquet of brands which are market leaders, and ultimately, I think for any organization, to me, growth is very important. Growth is like oxygen to any org. So we have to grow fast. We have to be in the top quartile of FMCG companies in terms of top line, and ultimately it has to go translate also into bottom line. And finally, do all that in the right way by following the ESG principles, so that there is high degree of credibility in what you're doing, and there is high trust you're building with all the stakeholders.
Absolutely. My last question, I said last, but you achieved it all, Mr. Mariwala. You built a successful company, you built successful management and professionalized the company. You freed yourself so that you can pursue on strategy, thinking, ideation, pursue your philanthropic objectives, mentor people, written a book, you run a
Yes.
foundation. What is it that Mr. Mariwala has left on his bucket list, if at all he has one?
No, I think I'm doing a lot of things, and I'm enjoying this journey also. I've reinvented myself in the last 5-7 years, and I really enjoy doing what I'm doing. But I think I wouldn't call it a bucket list, but I would like to do more and more in terms of giving something back in a much bigger way as I move forward. We are doing a lot of work in the area of mental health, but can it be much larger, as we grow forward.
Okay, Jyotsna, your last question.
Can you tell me what is your favorite book other than Harsh?
And by the way, Jyotsna, Mr. Mariwala reads a lot. Huh?
Yeah. So I don't have one favorite, but many favorites. It's very difficult for me. I'm a kind of person who doesn't have one favorite actor, one favorite cricketer, one favorite golfer. Or one favorite businessman, one favorite company. So I can, very difficult for me to identify just one. But if you ask me which are the good books I've read, and on the personal side, if you want to overcome grief, I think Man's Search for Meaning is fantastic. It's a very old book about somebody who was in the concentration camps in Auschwitz, but it's worth reading for everybody, how that person overcame that. Then a book on grit, which is a combination of passion, determination, perseverance. Then book on execution, which is written by Ramcharan. How do you improve execution capabilities? Then book on purpose and conscious capitalism, which is written by Raj Sisodia and Jagdish Shed, in terms of what is the role of organization. They've been talking about this stakeholder management. We've been practicing for the last 10 years. Now the whole area of stakeholder management has come to fore. But again, they've written a book on conscious capitalism. So these are some of the books which come to my mind.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
So Mariwala, we look forward to reading your book and doing a conversation post that soon again. And thank you for your focus on ESG. That makes what you do special. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jyotsna. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.